What I'm excited to talk about with you today is your experience doing what I think was one of the best pitches. I've said this to you a few times. Genuinely, it's the best pitch I've seen on Shark Tank. That it stuck with me that way anyway. Like, I just thought you guys did such an excellent job with your pitch. The clarity of it, it was compelling, but also the way the Sharks responded. Let me turn it to you. And it's been a couple weeks since I watched it, but what I remember, what it felt like was all of the Sharks were circling you and saying, "Hey, we want a deal." That's what it felt like. Was it everybody?
So kind of like something that you wouldn't know is, so we got an offer from everyone besides Lori. What actually happened on stage, because that pitch was, I don't know, I've kind of blacked out, but roughly probably like an hour and 15. And what you see on air is like 9.5 minutes. So the clip that Lori says is like, "Oh, like, this is super cute. Like, I think your valuation needs an evaluation. Like, I'm out." In reality, for about like a 5-minute soliloquy prior to that, she was like, "You guys are the most amazing salespeople I've ever met in my entire life. If you came to my door and sold me anything, the answer would be yes. Like, I love it. I love you guys, but I think your valuation needs evaluation. I'm out." But really, it's actually prior to that, when we were kind of like on deck for Shark Tank, like the pitch before that, she spent $500,000 on someone else's company. So my interpretation of that is like, hey, she already saw those 4 other people interested. She already probably spent like her quota of the day out of like the 7 companies that were pitching, that
right.
she wasn't going to spend more money. So there's like nuances that like people wouldn't understand. So that's all to say, yes, we got an offer from 4 out of 5. I think if circumstances were different, we might even got an offer from her too. She liked it, but that is
yeah. She was very optimistic. That's why I thought maybe there was a detail off, but that totally explains it.
Yeah.
So, and you had a lot of the great Sharks like available that day. You know, I know sometimes they're changing.
Yeah, that's a whole story. I don't know. I'll share it anyway. So basically, we flew in, got in at like, you're gonna laugh at this, but 2 a.m. I seem to always be getting in at 2 a.m. The flight was delayed getting into LA. Got in at 2 a.m. on Sunday, and filming was supposed to be that next morning. And we got a call at like 5:30 in the morning being like, "Hey, filming's been canceled." And I'll spare the details because I didn't know the details, but basically they're like, "Are you guys around to film on Tuesday instead?" We go, "Sure, yeah, we'll clear our schedule. Like, we'll make sure we're around." So the original cast was actually supposed to be, from my understanding, a guest shark. I think it was supposed to be the founder of DoorDash. And then we kept kind of getting texts on the side being like, it's going to be this person. It's going to be this person. So we kept like preparing for a new panel, and then ended up being, hey, it's going to be like the classic panel of like the OG Sharks. So there was Sunday to Tuesday. There was a lot of other like in-depth research that was done, but ended up being the one. Yeah.
I feel like I would be more excited about the OG Sharks. Is that how you felt?
Yeah. I don't know. The grass is always greener. I thought someone like DoorDash and Tony Chu would be like interesting because it's very relevant. Candidly, we went in there with the mindset that Mark truly was the person that we were looking for. But you know, sometimes the Sharks partner up, and like that would have been cool. Like maybe the 2 of them were in it together, but who knows?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Mark is the big shark, and I think he said that he has probably done. He seemed confident that he's done more deals on Shark Tank than any other investor too.
I think that's accurate. It's also probably a factor of like him being one of the people that's one of the most like long-standing Sharks too. So that makes sense.
That's a good point. He's been there for almost maybe 10 years now, since 13, I think.
Exactly.
Yeah, big deal. Okay, so you guys you were much loved, had tons of an excellent reception, and I'm covering it up now, and I'm also covering it up with my name, but then I'd listed the deal that you got offered from Mark. Is this accurate? Is this what held up? $250K for 10% stake?
Yeah, it's definitely very common that. So yeah, $250K, 10%. That's what I ended up agreeing upon. A lot of deals will die. I don't want to quote this incorrectly. I think like 60% of deals die after they actually go off air. Most it's actually because the entrepreneur is like, we don't want to do this, or maybe in the heat of the moment, sharks are asking, what's your revenue? What's your EBITDA? And they just kind of spit something that's incorrect. And then during the due diligence period, the sharks are, okay, well, clearly this isn't actually what your numbers are. This is maybe what you thought it was, but I'm looking at the books and like your books are just terrible. And like you guys did not profit 35%. You profited like 5%, right? Like, you're not.
They don't make it through diligence. Yeah.
Right. So there's just a factor of due diligence on both sides, on both the entrepreneur side and on like the investor side. But we just, well, oftentimes what they said to us as well too is like, hey, you will not air until you accept the deal, kind of using that as leverage. But in reality, we actually filmed in July and then we aired in October, and we didn't even close our deal until February. So who knows?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So give me the, like, now I'm kind of regretting. I've just got Mark here kind of yelling at me in the background. That's okay. We have to spice up the background because I haven't figured out a better way to not have the exact same image of me in every reel. I probably wear the same shirt too. Anyway. So here's Mark. Let's go back to this question of like, how did you get on the show? Why? Who told you about it? What was the application process like? In brief.
I mean, I would say I told myself about it. I mean, like, it was definitely a show that myself, my business partner, Matt, we both watched as kids, right? It's, for me and my family, it was like the Friday night thing that you watched. It was recorded and you watched Shark Tank with the fam. So I definitely thought it was like a lifelong dream to be on the show. In some senses, I did always think it would happen, even though you think things like that only happen to people on screen. Right. But yeah, we applied in,
like, you had it in your head. I see. For me, that was TED Talks. I always wanted to do a TED Talk, and I'm like imagining someday. And then finally, I got to do a TEDx, and really, it relieved my interest in it. But you knocked it out of the park, and mine was not as inspiring as I was hoping. Sorry, enough about back to your. So this was like a show you'd always thought about.
Yeah. Application process the first time we applied was my senior year of college, 2020. So you Google Shark Tank, you go on a website, you fill out an application. Like, you don't get a special call being like, we've been watching you from afar. Like, we think you guys are great. Like, that doesn't happen. So we applied, then we got a basically call like 2 months later in February saying, hey, you guys were great. Like, we want you to go on to the next round. So we filmed a video. We filled out, it was roughly between myself, my business partner, Matt, and like the group company application, around 600 pages. And at the time it was handwritten. So funny story about that too, is I actually fell off a ladder in one of our warehouses, senior year of college, and I broke my like dominant wrist. So we had one of our like younger friends write the application for me. And then through that process, he learned a ton about the company, ended up working for us for a couple of years. So yeah, it was handwritten. We were super excited. And then pandemic hit, and basically they went 0 Dark 30. They were supposed to get back to us by May. Obviously, they did not do that. They ended up still filming Shark Tank that season. It was a bit delayed, but it was like very, very much like COVID companies. Sure. So then took a year off, and then it basically applied the following year after that. Same thing. I was sitting at home on my dining room table, like at my family's house, and was kind of feeling nostalgic. I was like, you know what? Let's apply again. Applied, February, got the call, did the video, did the application. This time it was like typed on a computer. So we had made it as far as we did the first time, and we thought, oh wow, like we're on the show, right? And then in reality, it was a part-time job for 9 months after that. So we applied in December and didn't end up filming until July of that year. So it was homework assignments, like tons of interviews, tons of pitch prep, very much kind of autonomous, like they make you do it on your own. So we took it into our hands, and we had our friends for weeks and weeks leading up, like basically staging and being pretend sharks and like ripping us, be like, you guys suck, like this is terrible. And us just getting on there for hours and hours and just practicing what we were going to say.
Wait, so who were the, okay. So a couple things that I think stand out and that are really neat. When you watch you guys pitch, I think any practiced eye at all would recognize this is polished. You've practiced 100 times. Like, this is incredibly smooth. But I think sometimes people kind of imagine that a great pitch just comes from being like a great person or something. They may like miss all the practice that goes into it. And the rigor that you just described is really interesting. what I didn't catch is the detail. Like, who are you practicing with, and is this all like organized by ABC, by the Shark Tank team? How did this go down? Mhm.
Fully autonomous. Anytime we would do like a practice round with Shark Tank, we would be so nervous for it, right? We'd go up, we'd do it, and they'd go, "Oh, guys, you guys are the best one we've seen. Like, you're good. No feedback. Move on." I'm like, "Okay, like, thanks." Right? Because I think most people actually weren't taking the time to prepare. We were like, you know what? We've invested this much time now. Like, anytime a homework assignment or like something came in, it took 100% first priority. But like, if we were to do it, we want to do it, and we want to crush it, and we want to actually get a deal. We want to get on air. We want to make it the best possible like advertisement for our business.
Yeah.
And a lot of this comes from Matt, where he's like a 3.98, biochemistry GPA kind of student, which he was like very, very intelligent, very prowess, very practiced. So he was like, let's make this. He almost treated it as a game, and he definitely led the charge in that sense. Where he's like, it's like taking an exam. Like, there's a way to get an A. He's like, you just need to figure out how the professor grades. What questions you think are going to be asked. Access the test bank, whatever you want to do. So we Googled 500 classic pitch questions, and we literally would practice every single one. And then we would have our friends be assigned like a shark that get into character, like very seriously for like hours on end for weeks. And one friend would be Mr. Wonderful, and he'd literally like curse us out, like, this is garbage, or they were also like entrepreneurs themselves. Like, they weren't just like asking joke questions. Like, they were reading through the question base and then, kind of going from there. And I think that putting under pressure of standing on different sides of each other in front of different people, in front of your friends, you also don't want to look embarrassed in front of, like, we just practiced a lot. And I think that came out too when we were physically vanning over to the show, and we had a couple other people that were on the show in the car. They're like, "Oh, like, you guys are so cute." Like, we were 22, 23 at the time. Like, "What business do you guys run?" And they started asking us questions, and we're just like ripping off the answers. And then we'd ask them a couple of questions after that. They're like, "Oh, I didn't really prepare." Kind of like you mentioned. They're like, I'm just going to wing it. I'm like, that's crazy. Like, I would never wing the big but
well, there's, I think when it comes to presentations and any kind of speech, I'd put them in a similar category, because, correct me if I'm wrong, but what it looks like is they put you on the stage and they say, okay, pitch, go, right?
Yep.
Like, it's not really a conversation. You pitch your business, and that's normal. But it seems to me like the way I've always thought about it is there's a dip, like, zero practice, I can say something pretty smooth and come across fairly compelling if I've been doing a lot of speaking. A ton of practice and you can come off amazing like butter, but there's like 100 hours in between where you just sound awful because you've got it kind of memorized, kind of not, and you're like coming in and out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I can understand people saying, hey, I'm just going to wing it, because maybe they knew that they couldn't or didn't have the time to like get smooth like you guys got to. How many total hours do you think you spent like practicing going through that rigmarole? Hundreds. Yeah.
So and the difference being is like, so to your point, it was a 60-second pitch. Like, you walk in and you have 60 seconds to give your pitch. And that's with the little video in the background, like you do your little thing. And then after that, it's open Q&A. But the pitch, like, that's not really the difficult part. That's a lot of emotion. That's a lot of energy. It's having the answers to the questions that they're going to ask. And that's the part you get to practice. And this is like the tip. This was really one of the most interesting things that I heard someone that was on the show prior tell us. He said it's going to go against all of your like organic instinctual nature to do this. But when somebody asks you a question, you need to essentially anticipate the question and cut them off in the last 5 to 10% of it. That way you can give your answer immediately afterwards, not to sound smart, but that way there's no delay in when the question is asked and when you give your answer. Because if there is, this is TV. And if somebody asks a question, "Hey, Owen, what was your revenue in 2024? And you go, "Our revenue was 1.5 million. In that time in between, you could get clipped. You could basically get like spliced to a different part of a half hour earlier when you look like a fool because you walked onto stage and you're like your mouth is wide open, right? So like the only way to actually make it seamless is to not have any gaps in between when somebody's asking you a question and when you give an answer. So in order
you
to
got to be smarter than the editing team.
create, like there was some deep stuff like that to like, and there was a couple more examples of things like that where we're like, okay, this is not just you go up there and you answer a question. Like in order to do this well and make those 9 minutes perfect, like you got to be dialed.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome. So it required excellence, not just with a smooth pitch, not just with knowing the answers to every possible question that could come up, but also having the presentation skills that are going to be fit for TV, being able to kind of hack the system and not be made a fool in the editing process.
Yeah, and that's also part of like you knowing me between myself and Matt, like who's going to answer which questions. Because if we look at each other, we go, who's going to answer that? That's a break right there. So like he answers this, I answer that. Like it's everything's calculated.
Right. Yeah. So you're working like a team so that you have kind of a choreography. Okay. Yeah. So what about, let me ask you a couple more questions just about the upfront like Shark Tank piece. Then we'll go back and talk about the business itself. And then I've got some rapid fire. My friend GPT here has given me a list of incredible questions that are guaranteed to get us going viral online. So we'll go through those, pass or take them. So like what regarding the episode itself, what surprised you the most? Having been a lifelong fan or something akin to that, gotten on the show, meeting some of your heroes, people like Mark, I'm sure live up to that. What stood out to you the most as being like not what you expected?
I thought so you have a conception as a young person that every big business and big idea has like special systems and software and like incredibly intelligent people. Mm-hmm. And in reality, like our assignments, so to speak, were literally just emails with bolded and highlighted, and it was Google Docs and Google Sheets. And they said, hey, what do you want your set to look like? And I go, what do you mean? What do we want our set to look like? Isn't this like a show? And they go, great. Here's this Google Sheet with different categories. Go find the items. First, draw it out on a piece of paper, email that to us, then sketch it out on like online, and then go find we want a desk. Okay, go find a desk on Amazon and Target and put the link here. Make sure there's no logos. We'll approve each item. And then you're going to order it all. And then you're going to fly out a day early and you're going to assemble it yourself. Right? Like, and at the end of it, right, we get the deal. We're stoked. We have a meeting with actually like a psychologist being like, are you guys okay? Right? We said, we're great. We meet with Mark's lawyer. We go, we're great. We're excited to go out to dinner. It's like 10
Wait, p.m. They gave you a psychologist?
Yeah.
Like the show did?
Yeah.
Because they're used to people like breaking down after the pitch. Is that what's going on?
I think it's like a release of liability. Because also imagine we went on there and we tanked, right? We'd be really upset. So we said we're great. We meet with the lawyer. We say we're great. We're about to go out to dinner and celebrate. This is the best moment of our lives. And the Shark Tank staff come back in and they give us one drill, and they go, okay, guys, go break down your set. Like no one is going to do the work for you. That was my summary. Whether it was on the show, or whether it's like now you partner with Mark. Oh, now Mark's team's gonna like do our accounting and our finance. No one is going to do the work for you.
If ever you feel like you've risen above like the shit, the hard work, you did not.
And that's the thing too. I think people go, oh, I can wing it. And it's like, yeah, you can, but I think it's really like transparent when I go to conferences and people are clearly just like winging your presentation. I'm like, you have 500 people in front of you, 500 people times 1 hour is 500 hours. Like you should at least be like practicing for a portion of that, right? To kind of provide value to other people. So that's the hard thing to do. Like you want to just go up there and wing it, but unless you're speaking every day, like if this is like your 1 or 2 speaking opportunities throughout the year, I think it's worth it to practice.
Yeah, absolutely. No, there's no question. You're right. Will I do it? That's a different question. I think it becomes like it's part of the day to day. What am I prioritizing here? But you did the math on your appearance and you said, hey, this is tell me about the dollar value that you assigned to this. You saw it as a commercial for the company and it worked out that way because you had such great control of your pitch. How else did you do the math and think about like a $2.5 million valuation, but it's Mark Cuban's money? Like, tell me a little bit about the numbers.
So another interesting thing about Shark Tank is that it's not like a traditional negotiation. You can't go down, right? So we couldn't go in there asking for 250,000 for 15% and settle on 250,000 for, I'm sorry, the valuation couldn't go down. I apologize. So we went in there asking 250 for 5%, and we settled on 250 for 10%. So you can't like switch it up and go in reverse.
The valuation did go down, but it can't.
It's been so long, I'm already forgetting.
Yeah, it's because it's inverted.
Basically, it wasn't traditional. You couldn't just negotiate back and forth. Like, the valuation could only go down. It couldn't go up. Yeah. I apologize.
Right. That makes sense.
So even like what you're presenting in the beginning is like somewhat of a strategic ask, because you don't want it to be such a high valuation that people are like, you guys are idiots, right? And you don't want it to be so low that you know they're going to negotiate. It's Shark Tank, it's national TV. Like, they need to have some like clickbait information on them negotiating back and forth. Like, very rarely do they go, your valuation's great, deal, right? So for us, we went in prior, like, you know what, we will do nothing more than 15%. But it was kind of our ceiling with Mark. The money didn't really matter, like in terms of the amount. I mean, obviously $250,000 is amazing, right? And he's quoted at one point during the episode, we asked for 300,000. He goes, the extra 50K doesn't really matter. You won't think about that later. Like, yeah, I'd love an extra 50K now. But in reality, it was the 15% of whatever money was, was kind of just gravy. And then we said, if any of the other sharks offered us the deal of 250 for 5, like, we have 100% would have taken it. We wouldn't have like walked away. So Mark was our preference, but if somebody gave us the correct valuation, like, that was fine. But we knew Mark was going to do it, and he did.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. And why Mark again? Like, I mean, yeah, Mark is the best, but like, technically, what were you thinking?
A couple of things. Number one, we knew he owns the website studentdebt.com. So like, that was very much part of our mission, the business and the pitch. And so we knew it was very relevant to him. So we kind of speak to his like emotions on that side. His daughter was an incoming freshman at Vanderbilt. So once again, we knew this was a very relevant problem for him. So he emailed us 5 minutes after we got off stage and said, hey, can you move my daughter in 6 weeks? That was one thing. And then the last thing was, you know what? So like, actually we didn't move her in that time. We're like, hey, we're actually not set up at Vanderbilt, but we've now moved her 5 or 6 times afterwards. But then the last thing being is also like, if we're going to get that commercial, I think statistically more people in the world or in the country recognize the name Mark Cuban and respect that versus maybe some of the other names. So we're like, you know what, why not just get the best in that sense?
Yeah, it adds value to your company through advertising, negotiations. It just makes everything easier when you've got a name like that next to you.
Yeah, I think there's very niche appreciation for each of the other sharks in different areas, right? Like Barbara in real estate, Damon in fashion, right? Versus Mark's kind of just like he's not tech, he's just everything, right?
Generally, no. Especially on college campuses.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else that you want to mention that just like maybe that you found to be much better about the experience than you expected? One thing you said is like you were up there for a full hour and something. Yeah. So I got to say, from my perspective, I'm surprised. I'm kind of surprised to hear that. I guess on reflection, it makes sense, but I'm surprised that they really paused and said, let's take this guy seriously, who did all this work to get here, instead of treating it more just like a show and then passing you on to like, okay, you made a deal with Mark, go deal with him. I thought that was kind of interesting. They heard you out.
Well, in that respect though, it's the most authentic version of reality TV you're going to see. And when I say that, I mean that they genuinely, like, we're in a trailer prior with a fake company name on it. We don't wear our company shirt around like the filming lot. They know nothing about us until the moment we step on stage, and they're investing real money. This isn't like they get, hey, Shark Tank, Storage Hours is going to be filming on this day. Go look on their website, do their due diligence. Like, they know nothing, and that's real. So that's why it is like an hour and a half, because whatever they know is purely the questions that they're asking live.
Wow. Yeah. That's incredible. Like, that's as much pressure on them as it is on you, because they have to be on their toes to really understand your company from what you've said. Kind of at the tip of their fingers or their mind, they have to access like general industry experience and knowledge and insights. I mean, this is pre-GPT too, so they didn't have like, you know, they didn't have an all-knowing assistant in their ear.
Yeah, that probably was one of the more impressive parts to answer your question directly, is like, yeah, there was a lot of time and attention put into our presentation from, you know, the Shark Tank side too, and the casting side. Yeah, it was a part-time job for us, but, you know, it's also a part-time job for them too, to get us out there. And, you know, we're not professional actors, right? Like, we could have panicked and, you know, had a bad performance, and that obviously doesn't make good TV either. So I guess that makes great TV, not good TV.
Yeah. Well, you guys were great TV. I'll just like I'll stick your interview at the end of this interview, your Shark Tank appearance, so that people watch it, because it just was so good. I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure we'll get more people watching this interview than have watched that clip. It's like 4 million viewers per episode, I think, just in the standard broadcast. So probably not. All right, I've got the list of questions here. Some of them include like getting into the details about the business. So how about we just run through these, and then when you got to go, you just say peace. Then, because I'm okay. All right.
Okay.
Here we go. And swipe left, swipe right. You know, accept or reject the question. How about that? Describe your Shark Tank pitch in 3 emojis. Let me add some nuance here. Describe how you felt giving your Shark Tank pitch in 3 emojis.
Sweaty. That's like the little sweaty emoji of the guy sweating.
Yeah.
The guy with the dollar signs on his eyes, because I mean that's what you're thinking. That's a lot of the motivation. Yeah, it's like the end goal. And then I would say like the hug part with the 2 people that are hugging each other. Just the moment of myself and Matt afterwards, like that embrace when like the moment was over and like all the stress and relief was off, was very magical.
Your time paid off.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah.
Okay, good. That's the most corny question I had. Thought I'd start with that one. If your storage product could solve one, like if you framed it as, so Storage Scholars, we didn't dig into it, but it's like the reason you were able to do so well is because you built such a great company. So tell us about Storage Scholars, but around this question of what is the one major problem that Storage Scholars solves, and has that changed since the episode?
Yeah, for the core business, a lot of the universities that we serve, these students are taking their final exams, and their final exams are worth 60 to 70% of their final grade. And that final exam week is happening at the peak time where they're trying to go to their final party, they're trying to make their plans to move home, they're studying, super stressful, they're getting less sleep. So, and when you're paying $60,000 to $80,000 a year to go to that university, to us, we see the opportunity cost of spending $500-600 to have someone save you 10 to 15 hours of like backbreaking work during that week to be absolutely worth it. So the problem solved is just more like, what is your time worth? And oftentimes to students during that time of the year, it's not worth $500 to $600, or more often than not, it's not worth it to parents. But they'd rather their student focus on the exams, or also maybe come home a day earlier, you know what I mean, versus getting a later flight, that kind of thing. Plus kids just hate. I mean, moving is the 3rd most stressful life event behind that of death and divorce. And these are college students that are 18 that never even moved themselves before. So they don't even know the pain they're about to go through. So oftentimes if they move themselves, they come back to us the following year. They go, yeah, I do not want to do that ever again. And then they use our service. Moving is worse than taxes. I guess so.
That's a cool figure. Okay. How about this question? Did the appearing on Shark Tank, has it changed your life? Like, has it changed your life in a meaningful way, having been on the show?
Yeah, I'd say for sure. It's It's always a really positive, uplifting intro or conversation starter to anyone. The moment I went on and the moment we got the deal, that's when the real work started. Like it didn't hit like we're not like celebrities, right? But whether it's in a peer friend group, whether it's moving to a new city and meeting new people, whether it's meeting you, Owen, right, and the SRBA, like that's your first instinct. It's like, oh, you were on Shark Tank, you partnered with Cuban. It's a level of like social credentialing and business credentialing and all sorts of stuff too. And then there's also a video behind it. Somebody can look it up and Google it and say, oh, that's really cool. 10 minutes of their time, short, good clip. So yeah, I think it's changed our life because a lot of doors are just easier to open now. And I'm continuously surprised over and over again of how many people do know the show, because we could get investment from Andreessen Horowitz, right? And it could be way more valuable from like a business acumen perspective, or we could have been a part of Y Combinator, right? But I would say, I'm going to make this up, 10 times more people in the world know about Shark Tank and Mark Cuban than they do about Andreessen Horowitz or Y Combinator, right? Because it's a 16-year-old or 10-year-old kid could know about it and be excited about it, and an 85-year-old grandmother could be excited about it and know about it, and so could a seasoned investor, and that's the cool part.
Talk to me about Y Combinator versus Shark Tank. That's an interesting thing that you brought up, because when I look at your valuation, which is what, 2.5 million, right? 10% at 2.250. I kind of compare that to a YC valuation, but I also wonder, like, is your company comparable? So did you actually think about taking investment from a group more akin to that? Is your company able to scale at that rate at this point? Because when I thought Storage Scholars, I'm like, this sounds like a great business, something Cuban would be interested in. It does not seem like a radically high growth, high margin company. It seems more like a nice cash flow business over time. How did you think about it? How do you think about it now?
I did that question a lot of different ways. I've never applied to YC. I've never really gotten into like the startup scene and like gone to like the networking events and stuff like that. Part of the reason being is that I've always felt that people that were making content or going to networking events and talking about business, like I'd rather just be spending my time working on the business, right? Like there's much like fluff behind it. Like I don't need to make, like, I can have my own friends. Like a lot of people go into these incubators like that because they feel very isolated, which is super genuine around being an entrepreneur. Fortunate enough that I have Matt, right? So like we're able to kind of share these battles and like have the similar shared experience. So I don't need like entrepreneurial like friends to share my woes with. So the YC part of it, I think we bootstrapped the entire company. We could have continued to do it. We didn't need the money necessarily at all. The money was great. It allowed us to grow quicker. So I think moving back, 5 years ago, if we had gotten $1 million, like we definitely could have grown a lot quicker. But I also think that when you bootstrap it, you grow things a lot smarter. Moving forward, candidly, I didn't necessarily see the path over 10 to 15 million maybe in revenue in this core business until the last like 6 months, where we're not from a shiny object syndrome. Like I've started plenty of other businesses on the side thinking like, we're great at one thing, we can be great at now doing like Valley Laundry for students or something like that. And in reality, all those failed and all those were a waste of time. Or doing a local residential moving company within one of our college cities, like it was a waste of time. But we're now doing very tangential like business lines within university spaces that have a much, much higher ceiling. And a lot of those are B2B plays. So, I mean, I see a path to couple $100 million company easily within the next couple of years, which is crazy. And it's really reinvigorated my like energy and passion behind something like this, because it doesn't seem like it has a ceiling anymore.
Yeah. Oh, that's super exciting. That's something I feel like you could, from experience and having built a company, you could have an intuition that this thing, they're onto something beyond what the founders might even see right now. Like just thinking about being in Mark's shoes, seeing you guys being like, A players, and just knowing that there's probably something big here, I can imagine. But I also know that when you're in the like grind of building the company out, it's hard to see over the next hill or the next summit, like until you're up there and you're doing a great job, it's hard to really envision in a practical way, how you're going to make money beyond that. Either that, or like you said, you get lost in the world of just like thinking all day and not really building the company. You said, go ahead.
No, that's yeah. I would agree.
Okay. So I didn't want to keep you for too long. I thought like we would just focus on this one thing and then save some like interesting questions for the event, and let people from the audience bring some questions. I'm sending a sheet around to people that are registering for the event. Come up with questions that they want to ask you in person, or make sure that we get you have a chance to talk about. And I think that's where we would dig in a little bit more on the backstory of like getting the business started. But I'll ask one last question in relation to how this impacted you as a student. And then if there's anything else that you think it would be interesting to tack on, then have at it. So when you founded Storage Scholars, you and your co-founder, you guys were students, correct? And so you were doing all this while you're trying to balance school.
Correct. Yeah. Started at my freshman year. Matt was actually a high school senior. So we met when I was a sophomore and he was a freshman. But yes, it was the problem that we're solving for students of busyness during final exams. It was 10x for us because we were actually running the entire business too. You know?
Yeah, you definitely didn't solve the problem for yourself, I guess, did you?
No.
Okay, so whose idea was it? You or Matt?
Mine. Yeah, I started my freshman year and I ran it with a different partner, and then we split up, and then I brought Matt on.
So you guys didn't, the first one didn't work out, but then you and Matt ended up working out really well. So that's
correct.
Cool. You didn't lose faith in relationships altogether.
Yeah. And in year one is always like your figure. I mean, we had like $18,000 in revenue, right? I mean, it wasn't there was plenty of work left to be done.
Well, yeah, a lot of squeeze, not a lot of juice. Okay. So you started this as a student. It like had to like just wreak havoc on your personal, either it made your personal life really fun or it made it like really hard, and your academic life. So just tell me, like, how did this impact you as a person trying to start and succeeding in starting a genuinely scalable company that got attention of Mark Cuban while going to college? Like, how did you navigate that? Yeah.
I mean, the very real and raw answer is that it was starting the business. It was not respected at all. If anything, it was like ostracized, and like nobody understood, nobody respected it, nobody liked it. And it was like that for 4 years. Like people literally made fun of it. Like, why are you not going to this or this, and you're doing that, or you're skipping beach weekend to go like move some students, or and I was also an RA as well my sophomore year, purely from like a financial perspective too. So doing the well, I'll leave it at that. So there was elements of I would say the social life that it was not elevating.
Why didn't they get it? Like too blue collar or something? What was the?
I don't know. Maybe it was just an interesting school. I mean, where I went to Wake Forest, I think the main focus for most students there is a lot of them just go to the business school and you work in finance or in accounting. It's a very like specific path. Versus like, you know, you think, okay, I'm going to be a financial advisor and make $250,000 a year. Like, I'm not going to like move boxes or take out the trash, right? Like, yet those blue collar businesses at scale actually make you a lot more money. So I think there's just a lack of like foresight of like what things could be at a bigger scale. And a lot of people said to me, and they'll say to you all the time, it's like college is the best 4 years of your life, you know, like live it up, and everything after that is downhill when you start your real job in your real life. And I'm like, that's bullshit. But like, luckily I didn't, you know, I had a great time in college, right? I mean, I was in a fraternity. I played club soccer. Like I was in a bunch of different clubs. Like I had girlfriends. Yeah. Like I had a great social life. But there definitely was a different level of priority. It was, my parents were both teachers, so it was still school, like make sure I get the good grades. I wasn't going to like disrespect my professors in that sense. Then it was business because I needed to pay my way through school. I didn't want to have debt at the end of the year. It wasn't like, oh, I want to create this business because this is cool. It's like, I have a bill I need to pay every year, so I need to pay it off through this business. And then the third thing was social after that. And there's plenty of time to do all three. It's just how you prioritize them, and then you become more efficient in other aspects. But fast forward, graduated, it's the pandemic. a lot of people that were going down a very straight arrow path and maybe had really good grades and really good internships weren't getting jobs because it was the pandemic. And I think that was the real like flip of the switch for some people when they're like, holy crow, like these kids are like, these guys are still doing this like moving thing, you know? And like the school just like sent us all an email being like, hey, this, you know, these kids are going to pack up all of our stuff. Like, wow, this is real. Like good for you guys, like respect. So that was cool.
So the
But
pandemic and closing campus, that ended up driving business to you. Is that what you're saying? Like,
it did. I mean, I think for our business perspective, it would have been better if the pandemic didn't happen. Like we were just on a different trajectory. So yeah, we definitely got a lot of business from it, but it wasn't profitable because we were.
it was an incident that was remarkable because, like, everybody on campus kind of saw that you had a role to play. So
Yeah, it was very, very relevant. Yeah, like we moved out like every student on a lot of different campuses. So
Wow.
we employed hundreds of students on these campuses doing that. So like it got a lot more face value.
Yeah, that's really cool. Okay, yeah. All right. Well, hey, thank you so much. It's like great just digging in a little bit on your experience with Shark Tank. I mean, I have to say 10 years ago when the show came out, I always thought, oh, Shark Tank, that's like silly or not real business. I had like the wrong idea about it. And then, you know, getting to talk with you and getting to finally watching the show more because my girlfriend like loves it. I've really come to appreciate it and appreciate the folks and the businesses that build that come up on the show. Is there any last thing that you think would be worth mentioning?
Well, just on that topic, it's always funny. You asked about if I had imagined ever being on the show and what's my reaction post show is I can't even really watch it anymore. Like Shark Tank, because I get so nervous. Like, 'cause I get in that emotional feeling where I'm watching these people come down. I'm watching them get ripped on stage. I'm just like imagining myself in that moment. And I'm like, it was so much work. Like, I don't really want to do it again, you know? And even prior to that too, I was like, oh, I'm going to be there. And like, it's going to be a lot of work and it's going to be a lot of time. So to me, it's not this like fun, cute show. It's like, no, this is like a grind.
Man.
Yeah, it's like not entertaining anymore.
Cool. Yeah, that's great. Well, I'm glad that you put in the time the one time, and I'm sure you are too.
Yeah.
Always be what are you? It's a Shark Tank, and what are you, a minnow?
I guess. Yeah.
All right. Well, keep it up. You guys, anybody listening, when we post this, you can meet Sam, the team, and some other interesting folks at our Surge conference. And that's going to be November 14 through 17 at Stanford. So thank you, Sam, for coming and being a big part of that. And then we'll be getting a lot more students involved with storage scholars through other campuses, etc.